Hello class, and welcome to another Android lesson. And in this lesson we are talking about how to store data in our applications so that we can use that to make decisions or retrieve more information based on the information that the user has given us or information that we may already have. Right? And we call this persistent data because previously when we've written our applications, we have some variables, we store those in RAM, and after the application closes, that RAM is cleared out and we don't have that data anymore. We didn't store it or save it in some format. So with persistent data, we have 5 different places we can store our data that I talked about in the lesson, right? Shared preferences, the internal storage of the device, external storage like an SD card, a SQLite database for more structured data, or if you need a little more privacy, or via a network connection, so actually sending that data back to a web server that's running some kind of database. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to work with some data in your Android application, store some values, retrieve some values. And I've just started with a regular blank activity. I called this application Rewards. And what the Rewards app is going to do is take in some information from the user and then make a little query and return some information. So this is about the reward status of a user, and so I'm going to need their name and I'm going to need their rewards number. So I'm going to start out, get some items on the palette here. I'm going to call this reward status check. All right, we'll just get that nice and big on the screen. We're going to need a couple of text input areas so they can give us their name and their ID number. We just want plain text. And the first one I'm going to name, let's just call this name. And we can put in some text here. So we see that name, and another one for their ID, let's call it membership number, and I'm going to call this member num. All right. I'm also going to need a button so they can click it, let me know when they're done, and they want us to proceed with the search. So this is going to be find status, and we're going to call this the submit button. All right, you could add a picture or something in here if you wanted, spice it up a little bit, but just for demonstration purposes, this is what we've got. So they're going to enter their name. We're just going to do first name. So let's do first name. And their membership number, and then they're going to click Find Status, and then we're going to create a second activity that's going to display their reward status. Before we dig into our code, though, let's talk about how we're going to save the data that works on the back end of this application. Because what we're talking about doing here is the user will enter a first name, they'll enter a membership number. We will then have to go look for this information in our data set in order to determine that we have the correct record, and we can display the reward status, membership level, whatever, of the person that we are looking for. And so one of the most effective ways to save just simple application data to an Android device is by using the shared preferences object. And this data is saved to an XML file in key value pairs. So if you're not familiar with key value pairs, a key is a string that has a name, like a variable, that uniquely identifies that particular item. And then the value is the data that we're storing. So in a lot of our programs, we might create a variable named name, and then the value would be Tiffany. So in a key value, the key would be name, the value would be Tiffany. And so this Android Shared Preferences object can store data that can be used in different activities of your application or by other applications. And it's common to do this on like apps like this where we just have a simple data set, or even games where things like you're keeping track of usernames, levels achieved, right? Anytime your app has preferences, so if you want it to load up with a certain particular set of features or options, this shared preferences is the easiest way to do it. Now, the limitation to shared preferences is that it only supports a specific set of 5 different data types. So we can store strings, integers, long values, float values, or booleans, and that's it. If you need more sophisticated data types or a more sophisticated structure than a key value, then the shared preferences object is not going to work for your situation. So instead of what we have done in previous lessons where we have created a method and then attached it to the button, I'm going to show you how to use the onCreate method inside of your main activity to create a button listener. And a button listener, actually, it's kind of self-explanatory. It listens for the on-click of the button and then performs a set of actions. So we have a separate method, but it's actually kind of built into the onCreate. And so here in the onCreate section, I want to go ahead and create and instantiate the XML controls that I'm using for my edit text, and so I can have those variables ready to go. So here in you've got your onCreate. Go ahead and leave your set content views. So we're going to instantiate the XML controls. And so I have an edit text, name, which is going to equal an edit text type, do a find view by ID, and it's R ID. I am terrible at remembering what I name things. Name. All right, we're going to do the same thing. Go ahead and do your Alt-Enters to import in your items. We're going to do the same thing for our membership number. And we're also going to go ahead and instantiate the button because we have to have an instantiated control for the button in order to set up our Onclicklistener. So this is going to be my button. Syntax almost identical here. All right. So let's set up an Onclicklistener for the button control. And the syntax for this looks a little funny. So it's going to be our submit button dot set Onclicklistener, and it's going to be a new Onclicklistener. And it goes ahead and sets up these curly braces for you because it looks a little squirrely. So we have the open parentheses like it's a method, and then we have an open set of curly braces. We actually set up everything inside of this onClick that accepts a view, and then the semicolon actually goes down here. So trust in Android Studio for setting up this syntax, but that's how the Onclicklistener should work. And then everything that we want that button to be able to do goes inside of this onClick section. So this is just a little different way of setting up a button control using a listener instead of having to create a separate method that then attaches. there really isn't too much difference between one method over the other. So before I dig into the onClick, I'm going to come up here to my class, at the class level up here, and I'm going to create a couple of variables to hold my name and my miles. So I'm going to set up a string, and I'm going to call this first name, and I'm going to set up an integer, and I'm going to call it my membership number. Yeah, name and membership number, that's what we're using. Okay, so we're going to use those down here in this onClick section. So our first name variable is going to be, let me scroll up so we can see what we were doing, our name instantiated control, and I want get text, and I want it to string. So then my membership number is going to be, well, I'm going to have to parse this into an integer because we want this in an integer value. So I'm going to do an integer, because I'm saving this as an integer. I'm going to do a parse int, and then it's going to be this membership number box up here, which I think it might be getting a little confused because I've named these the same thing. Let's name this membership number. No ambiguity. There we go. To differentiate that from the fact that we named this membership no as well. So that's going to be the membership number, instantiated control, same thing, dot get text, dot toString. So to comment this, we can say we are gathering the input data from the user controls. Now typically if we were writing a real application, then of course our first name and membership number would already be stored. But let me show you how we would go ahead and store this information, and then I'm going to set up a second activity to show you how to retrieve it. So let's store the name and number info into the shared preferences. Okay, so to put information into the shared preferences, we use shared preferences dot editor, and that equals the, oh, I have to give it a name first. Editor equals our shared edit. Now we didn't set up this object yet. And I got a little ahead of myself. So our shared preferences is going to actually be instantiated up here with our buttons and our text controls. And I totally got ahead of myself, but that's okay. Shared pref is what I typically name it. You can name it whatever you want. It's a variable. So this is going to be preferences manager, or preference manager. Preference. You have to be able to spell preference. Preference manager dot get default shared preferences, and then we just put this in there because it's this current object. There we go. And so instantiating that shared preference object up here tells it to go ahead and pull in the shared preferences that we have stored, which since we haven't done this before, there aren't any. And then we're telling it we're going to edit that object here with the edit method. So using editor, because that's the name of our variable here, name it whatever you like, I'm going to do a put string, and you can see there are the 5 different data types I told you that we support, right? So a put string key 1 is going to be the name of my first key, and I'm going to put in my first name variable. And then I'm also going to put string key 2, and that's going to be my membership number variable. Once you have all of your items in that you, oops, that's not a put string, that's a put int. Once you have all of the items in that you want to put in, and there's not really a limit to the number that you can put in here, then you commit. And then that will go ahead and store, I'm using the wrong variable names here, that will go ahead and store that information into that shared preferences object. So up here on your onCreate, when it pulls it back out, there will actually be data in there. So that's all we're going to do here with the onClick. Let's go ahead and set up our next activity. So this video has showed you how to store the information. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to set up the next activity and how to retrieve this information so that we can then run and test our application.